Modulation in music refers to the change from one key to another key. In tonal music, there are 30 different keys, 15 major keys and 15 minor keys. A modulation can take place between any two major keys, two minor keys, or a major and a minor key, as long as the tonal center changes. A change between parallel keys, C major to C minor for example, is not considered a modulation because the tonal center, or tonic, remains the same. During the common practice period, compositions would generally begin in one key and modulate to one or more other keys before returning to the original key. Keys that are next to one another on the circle of fifths are considered closely related keys. This includes the major keys and their relative minors. If we take the key of C major, for example, G is one key moving clockwise on the circle, and F is one key moving counterclockwise on the circle. If we include the relative minor keys, the following keys are closely related to C: G and F major, A, E, and D minor. In this video, we will explore the use of common chord modulation between closely related keys. In order for a modulation to be most effective, the first key needs to be established so that the listener can perceive the sound of the tonic, or do, in solfege. A quick way to establish a key is to use a 1 chord followed by a subdominant function chord, 4 or 2, a dominant function chord, 5 or 7 diminished, and a return to 1. Composers will often establish a key with just one and a dominant chord. This is effective if extended over 4 or more measures. For our example, we will use 1, 4, 5, 7, and 1 to establish the key of C. The point in our progression that modulates will include a pivot chord, also known as a common chord, followed by a dominant function chord in the new key, followed by the establishment of the new key. A pivot or common chord is a chord that two different keys have in common. Here is the key of C and its closely related keys. We can use common chord modulation to easily move between C and any of the other keys. Generally, when composing in a major key, composers during the common practice period would first modulate to the key of the dominant. In the key of C, the dominant chord is G. A dominant key is always found moving clockwise on the circle of fifths. Let's examine the triads found in the key of C and G to determine which chords are in common between the two keys. The diatonic triads in C major are C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, and B diminished. In the key of G, the chords are G, A minor, B minor, C, D, E minor, and F sharp diminished. The chords that are in common between the keys of C and G are C, E minor, G, and A minor. Since dominant chords want to pull back to tonic, they are not effective in this type of modulation, so we will eliminate G since it is the dominant chord in C. Let's try each of these chords within a common chord modulation from the key of C to G. Here we have the establishment of the key of C with 1, 4, 5, 7, and 1. Next we will add our pivot chord. Let's use A minor. A minor is 6 in the key of C and 2 in the key of G. We use this bracket and the name of the new key to show how the pivot chord functions in both keys. The next chord in our progression will be a dominant function in the key of G. Let's use D7, the 5-7 chord. Next, we will proceed to 1 and establish the key of G. Let's use 1, 4, 5, 7, and 1. The 6th chord in the original key becoming the 2 chord in the key of the dominant is the most frequently used pivot chord by a common practice composer. With 6 being a tonic function, but not 1, it is a relatively weak functioning chord. However, this chord functions as 2 in the new key. Being a subdominant function, 2 is a strong chord to lead to 5 in the new key. This chord is frequently used in first inversion to further weaken its function in the original key. This helps the modulation to be seamless. Here is the sound of our chord progression. Of the 3 common chords, A minor, C, and E minor, the next most frequently used chord for this type of modulation is C. C functions as the 1 chord in the key of C and the 4 chord in the key of G. Since C is 1 and the pivot, we can eliminate the repeated C chords in the progression. Here is the sound of this progression. If the first key of a composition from the common practice period is minor, the likely first modulation will be to the relative major key. Here is a diagram of the keys that are closely related to A minor. These are found 1 clockwise and 1 counterclockwise from A minor on the circle of fifths. Here are the common chords in A minor: A minor, B diminished, C, D minor, E, F, and G sharp diminished. And here are the common chords in the key of C major, the relative major of A minor: C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, and B diminished. The chords in common are A minor, B diminished, C, G minor, and F. Since B diminished is a dominant function in one of the keys, it will not be used as a pivot chord. You can experiment with the use of the remaining chords as pivot chords. A frequently used chord is F. Let's see how this works. First, we establish the key of A minor. Let's use 1, 4, 5, 7, and 1. Next, we have the pivot or common chord. F is the 6th chord in A minor and 4 in the key of C. Following the pivot, we need a dominant function chord in the new key. Let's use G7. Then we will establish the key of C. Let's use 1, 4, 5, 7, and 1. Here is the sound of our modulation from the key of A minor to its relative major, C. Let's summarize. A modulation is the change from one key to another key. The closely related keys to a given key are found 1 clockwise and 1 counterclockwise from the given key on the circle of fifths. This includes both the major and relative minor keys. Common chord modulation uses a chord that is in common between two keys and is an effective way to modulate between closely related keys. When in a major key, the most common first modulation is to the key of the dominant. When in a minor key, the most common first modulation is to the key of the relative major.